All right. In this lecture, we're going to be talking about a game designer. What does a game designer do? So you guys came here, went to a school about game design. You wanted to learn how to do game design, and I'm sure everyone has a different kind of view on what that means to be a game designer. What is the role of a game designer? And in class, I'm going to talk to you a bit more about this and get your views on it. But I'm going to give you some insight right now on what I think it means. So first, before we talk about what a game designer does, let's talk about what is a game, right? So let's talk about games versus toys. A game, well, let's talk about a toy first. A toy, can you have fun with a ball? Sure, you can have fun with a ball. You can bounce a ball. Is bouncing a ball a game? Not necessarily. I wouldn't say bouncing a ball with a game. I think you could have fun with a stick if you found it outside. You could have fun with a rock. And usually what we tend to do with these objects or these toys is we make games with these toys, right? So, basketball, people bounced the ball and they found it was fun to throw it into a hoop, and the person who was really good at throwing it into a hoop scored points, and the first person to this amount of points or the most points at the end of the amount of time wins, right? So we kind of apply rules to these toys to make games, right? So we kind of define what fun is, and defining what fun is a really interesting aspect of a game designer's job, because fun is subjective to many different people. So are we trying to find what fun is? Yes, we generally are. I mean, not all games are fun. Some are frustrating. Some are very, very challenging. And those can be different levels of fun, right? But we're trying to find where fun is by putting these things together and creating a rule set that will allow someone to follow these rules, and within these rules, try to accomplish something or reach some goal. So that is what I think a game is over what a toy is. So what do we do and what don't we do is more important as a game designer. So I've talked to a lot of students about what their view of a game designer is, and it has come through in a lot of different ways. They've talked about, well, you create this world and create this story, or create these characters that are going to act within your story. And I think it gets confused with the narrative gets confused with what we're actually doing. So there are degrees, like the creative writing degree, that will teach you how to do that very, very well, right? There are degrees that will teach you how to create a very, very interesting character that people care about what he does and what happens to him, or an interesting hook in a story and how to keep people interested in your story. So is that what we do? If you asked me, is that what a game designer does? My answer would be no. They're not the person in charge of the narrative. They're not in charge of creating why the people care about progressing through the story, or why the people are attached to the characters. Are they a creative designer? Do they create how the world looks and the theme of it? There is a job called creative designer. It's usually, if you've been in the industry a very long time and doing this, you have kind of a say over all those pieces. But we do that role sometimes, and maybe you will be a part of that. But I don't think it's the main role of a game designer. Are we a project manager? We probably will have to do some project management throughout our time. But are we the person who says, all right, I've come up with this idea. Here's how I want all the things done. Programmer, please go program these things. I don't even know what you're programming. Just I want them to do this. Artist, here's my really bad sketch because I'm not a good artist of what I think this should look like. Please make it look like this, right? Not necessarily are we going to. We do have to convey vision and communicate, but most of the time we aren't the people telling everyone what to do. We're not the person saying, I've come up with this idea and please let me communicate on everyone else how to do it. So, on the topic of ideas, we joke around the office, or joke with my buddies about game designers are idea guys. So I'm the idea guy. I have the idea, and uh, that's why I'm. That's why you want me, because I come up with this a great idea. But the truth is, everyone has ideas. I'm sure everyone who's who played video games, or has taken the next step to actually learn how to be a part of creating video games has ideas about a video game. So if it's just a story that you come up with, and you want to get that into a video game, that's not really what we're doing. If you think that programmers don't have ideas, they definitely do. Artists have ideas. What makes a designer useful, right? What makes you? Because the programmer could have the idea and then program it really well. And if a programmer and an artist get together and they both have ideas, they can go back and forth and then realize their ideas and make them look really good, right? So, what makes you a useful part of that team? Is it because you have better ideas than them? How have you trained to? I mean, they have tangible skills that are say, I can do this better than you. But how do you measure you saying I have better ideas than you? And there's got to be that's what you're here in this degree to learn, right? You're here to learn skills that they have not taken the time to hone, because they've been taking the time to learn how to program better or how to be an artist better. That's not to say you won't have to program. You're going to have to program in this degree. You're just not going to spend as much time as a person in the dev degree would on their programming. You're going to spend your time mastering other skills that do make you more knowledgeable in these areas that are very important to game design. And that area is not just the idea. It is much more deeper than that. It is it is understanding complex systems that you've put together in this working machine of these mechanics for this game, right? That is one portion from it. Understanding the psychology of why people make decisions. And we're going to get into that in a second. So, if we're not idea guys, what are we? I would say that we're rule crafters, right? So, if you strip away a board game, or, I mean, if you strip away what a video game is, and strip away the graphics, and strip away all the cool things, what makes just the game? What are the game mechanics? And so if you look at a game like, and I'm going to use a bad board game, it's not a bad board game, it's just Monopoly. I'm going to use a game Monopoly, right? What is the story behind Monopoly? I would say it's just capitalism, right? It is just make as much money as you possibly can by making certain decisions, right? And there's a set of rules that you have to follow. And roll the dice, move this many times, make a decision, buy or don't buy, sell, roll the dice, do it again, and make decisions. And so those rules on the set of rules that come down to what allows you to play Monopoly is the core of that game. It's not the board. It's not the little metal characters that you put on the board. It's the rules. And so if you can get to that point to where you're saying, this is what I am doing. I am crafting these rules to be followed in a way that is going to allow someone to be engaged, challenged, immersed, and have fun in some way. That is what I feel your number one job as a game designer is. And so we talked about analog games, board games, and so we talked about analog games versus digital games, right? We as humans can read a rule book for an analog game and continue to kind of remember the pieces that go into this. I know I need to do this. Let me check this. What happens here? I can do this. It's very linear. It's this person's turn. On their turn, they do this, this, and this. So what is different about that than what is different about video games or digital games than an analog game? Generally, not all the time, right? So they're very simple games, but generally, video games are much more complex, and they have some very complex systems involved with them. I don't know what games you guys are playing right now, but if you take a game like, I don't know, World of Warcraft, how many things are happening in that game while you exist in that game at any given time. And I'm not just talking about the other people, but how many things are happening at any given time. If you just take one piece of that game and you look at the combat system, and I'm not talking about one character, all of the combat system. That is a huge system with thousands and thousands of moving pieces, right? If you just break it down into one character, that is a huge system. Just how one character's combat system works is very huge. And the human brain, with all these moving pieces working together, it's very difficult for us to understand all of that in its entirety. And so what makes a great video game designer is that we understand we're using a tool, a computer, that's going to allow us to put all these pieces, these complex pieces together and run them simultaneously, because the computer's very good at that. And where we get from that is we get these amazing systems that allow us to do a lot of things, and we can get immersed in that system, right? We can get immersed in that world because there's a lot of stuff going on, but the end user is putting simple input into a box or into your game that outputs these amazing systems of 100 things going on. And that's a bit of the magic behind video games. And I think this complex system unlocks a portion of what you as a designer, that once you become great at that and understanding that it is not just combat. Well, put combat in the game. There's sword fighting, right? Sword fighting is a huge system. It doesn't, in a lot of games, sword fighting is a very, very big system. If anyone played For Honor recently, or just For Honor, you can see that's a very intricate system, their sword fighting system. There are other games where it's very simple, and it's just a collision box that comes out. But either way, understanding that and understanding all the pieces are going to work together, I think really lends towards what makes a game designer really good. A video game designer shine above other designers. And so as a video game designer, what are we going to be doing? What are our roles? So with this designer, and so the designer role is still kind of, it's ambiguous, and it's going to be ambiguous in a lot of scenarios, but we're trying to hone down what that means. Is it just come up with the idea, my ideas are better than yours? No, it shouldn't be that. It is, I can craft a complex system of things that go together to allow the end user to have a fun experience, and I'm better at that than you. That's pretty tangible. Usually, unless you're a unicorn and you can do everything, you're going to have to work on a team. And so you're going to have to be able to communicate. If you are the person who understands all the systems the best, not just the high idea, everyone can have their ideas, the high concept of the game, but the intricate systems of the game, if you're the person who understands that the best, you will have to communicate that somehow to other people. And you're going to have to talk the language of other people. So you're going to have to talk to programmers, you're going to have to talk to artists, and you're going to have to understand the words that they use. And not only are you going to have to talk to them, there are going to be times where you're going to have to play those roles, right? Specifically, a programmer, you're going to have to realize a lot of your own ideas before you can intimately speak about them. We'll discuss that a little bit more. So what tools do we need as a game designer? Well, you've already taken some classes up to this point. You've taken discrete math. You've taken psychology of play. I think you've taken that. You've taken fundamentals of physics. And you might have been asking, why do we need these tools, right? So there's the list here: math, programming, psychology, physics, economics, logic. Math is going to be a good game designer, you are going to have to really like math. And that's not just for programming math. There's a lot of different pieces of math you're going to be learning and understanding and using as a tool. If you think about balancing, and you think about the way that, if you said, I want a game balanced, what does it mean to make a game balanced? Well, a lot of that stuff is going to be in mathematical equations. If you wanted to make a mathematical equation for how damage is given to another person, and you have these other systems involved, you have armor, you have attack damage, you have attack speed, you have procs on your weapons, you have all these other moves that a person can do, and you want to look at DPS, damage per second. Well, damage per second takes all those things into account and makes a formula that says this is, with all those things into account, this is what this person's DPS is, damage per second. And some of those equations get pretty complex based on the systems that you have. So understanding how to, you have to not only understand how to read those equations, but you have to create those equations. And you have to say, this is balanced through math, not just because it feels right. Because some of the things will get so large that it's very difficult to do that. Programming, you're going to have to realize, you're going to have to be able to realize your craft. And programming is going to allow you to do that. We'll talk about that a bit more in a second. But psychology, we are asking people to press plastic buttons or tap a screen to allow something to happen. They may in their mind, you want them to think that they're slaying a dragon or shooting a bunch of zombies, but realistically they're tapping a mouse button or a controller button or doing something on their phone. You want them to want to continue to do that, and maybe want to do it enough that they're going to give you money to do it. Right? That is the psychology of fun, the psychology of getting people to want to play your games. So understanding human psychology is very important. Physics, we are in a 3D world. Math and physics go together. We are in well, if you're making a 3D game, but most 2D games even have to understand this. You are in an imaginary world that is governed by math and programming and logic and physics, right? So if you want some real world systems in here, like if you want to simulate gravity or you want a crate to roll around, you'll have to understand some of the reasons that's happening, or if you're adding forces to something. Economics. So economics is not just money. Economics is resources in and resources out. And resources can be all types of things, not just it gets put together with money, but resources could be mana, right? What is a good mana flow? What is a good base mana regen for this character? And how much are they spending out? And how much should we be giving back? And where do they dump? What is a good health regen? Health is a resource. How do they lose health? What is a good minion spawn system? How often do minions spawn in? What is a good setting for that? The minions are resources coming in, and how do they come out? So introduction of resources and exiting of resources into the system of your game is important, and there are economic rules that actually make sense for that. And then logic. Logic's going to be huge, and you already do logic. If you're making any games, you have done logic. The rule set for a game is a logical set of rules that you follow to stay within the bounds of the game to actually make it worth playing, right? So, if you just think of logic in one of its simplest forms, if this happens, then this happens. When this happens, then this happens. You are going to be thinking about that when you create your game. It actually goes very close into programming. Programming has a lot of these things too. You just need a different language to understand how to tell the computer to do it. So it's extremely important. And why do we have to do these things? So if you signed up, you signed up to be a game designer, and you didn't sign up for the dev degree, you didn't sign up for the math degree, and you didn't go to didn't sign up for a psychology degree or a programming degree. Why do we have to learn math and physics and programming if we didn't want to? We just wanted to come up with ideas for games, because you don't just come up with ideas for games. The theory version, you could come up with an idea and document that idea and say that I love video games, and this is a lot like this other video game, so it's going to be great. But it has these different pieces in it. So remember when I was talking about complex systems, right? Video games are very complex systems. Your idea on paper is just a theory. You are theorizing that when all the pieces come together and this engine's running and everything's working together, that the thing I'm doing is going to be engaging and fun. That is my theory that I propose to you in this document. And when the rubber hits the road and you put all those pieces together in the tool that you're going to use or in the video game, and the computer says, all right, you've given me all the pieces, I'm going to run what you did. And you turn around and it's frustrating, and the user doesn't know what to do, and the input's not that great, and some of the things you put in that you thought were really cool are extremely tedious. All that stuff happens, and that is the science of all those pieces working together. Is the science, and so you have to, before you expect someone else to put a lot of time into this project, you need to be able to be intimate with the reality of your game rather than the idea of your game. And you can do that by learning. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you're going to learn. You're going to be in the space of computers and the computers putting these complex systems together. So that's why you have to be very familiar with those things. And so how do we realize these things? One of the best tools that you can have as a designer is the ability to prototype your ideas. And by prototyping, you don't have to use great art. You don't have to be the best programmer. You don't have to have elegant solutions, but you can have an idea, and you guys have the knowledge to put this idea into the space it's going to really exist in, which is in the computer running all these systems together, right? And then instead of going up to someone with a document and say, like, wouldn't this be cool if we had this kind of idea? You could take a prototype to them and say, sit down and play this. I understand that it's ugly. I understand that it might be a little clunky in these places, but do you think that this has merit with all these things working? And you're going to get so much more buy-in from that. Even if you have an existing game, with existing features and you want to make a modification, or you think a change in this would be amazing, and you think you have the best idea to how to make the game better, being able to just go and do that and say, try it, is so important. It's ridiculously important. So I think this is the skill that makes the best game designers, is being able to do this. And so that is kind of an overall view of what I feel is important for a game designer. There's a lot of other skills that you guys will get into throughout your classes here, but those are some of the important ones that I feel. So we'll discuss this a bit more in the live lecture. But